Well, good afternoon, everybody. And what a rousing experience that was. And that was awesome. So thank you to the Palm Beach Pipes and Drums, and you will hear more from them. We'll have more from them during the service and a little bit at the end of the service. I want to warmly welcome all of you in the church today, and I want to warmly welcome everybody who's tuning in from the Northeast and from over the pond. I know there's relatives watching in Scotland, in England, New Jersey, and New York, so we're so glad that we're able to facilitate you being here with us today. Those of you who knew Bill knew that he could be a curmudgeon at times, and you will see that in the order of service that you were given, we have the Serenity Prayer. And Bill had his own version of the Serenity Prayer. He had a version that was the version, the only version, and there was no other versions apart from Bill's version. So, in honor of our sweet friend Bill, let us start our time together by one last time saying the Serenity Prayer the way that it should be said. So, if you would all read with me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm now going to read a brief poem by a Scottish poet whose name is Vicky Patterson. And this poem is called In Memorandum. The bird that was trapped has flown. The sky that was grey is blue. The bone that was dead has grown. The dream that was dreamed is true. The locked door has swung wide. The prisoner has been set free. The lips that were sealed have cried. The eye that was blind can see. The tree that was bare is green. The room that was once dull is now bright. The sheet that was soiled is now clean. The dawn that was dark is now light. The road that was blocked has no end. The unknown journey is now known. The heart that was hurt will mend. The bird that was trapped has flown. I'd now like to invite my friend Hampton and a dear friend of Bill to read from the Big Book. Hampton, sorry. Can you turn on the microphone for there should be a little slide button just on it there.
Not working, but I'll project. I do that in my profession. Page 46 out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Much to our relief, we discovered that we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided that we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all people. And from page 164, at the end of the Big Book, another passage that Bill relished. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. God bless. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thank you.
Alex or John is the pipe major just behind the door there. We're going to have a solo pipe song just now. The pipe major will now play Scots Wahey, a traditional song of Scottish lament. Thank you. We will now have a short message and some short remarks from Catherine Condie, one of Bill's daughter, who lives in Inverness in the north of Scotland. So she recorded a few words, which we will now be played.
It was 1988 before I met my father for the first time. This was at my Nana's funeral, Bill's mother Margaret, known as Greta. I get my middle name from her. It's Campbell. It was a roller coaster day. Not only were we, Billy, my older brother, and I, attending the funeral of our grandmother, but we always knew that this was when we would meet Bill. Billy had vague childhood memories, whereas I had none. Well, meeting Bill filled in so many gaps for me. Mannerisms, his writing, which Billy has, brown eyes and long legs, which we both have, the way he held his cigarette, again Billy copies this, independence, strong-willed, very dry sense of humour, and the Glasgow cynicism. That year, 1988, I was already booked on a family trip to Orlando. Bill came down from New York and spent a week with us. Disney, Cape Canaveral, and all the Orlando attractions and more. We got to know each other slowly. Aunt Molly was with us, and she had sworn that she would never talk to him again. However, they got on like a house on fire. We returned to Lantana the following 2 years and stayed at the waterfront apartment with him. Great times, fishing off the pier, kayaking, even Aunt Molly taking her turn on the kayak, and snorkeling. The Hawaiian bar featured strongly in these visits, where we would eat and drink and the kids spent time in the tiny pool or by the sea. We built on a relationship over those visits and kept in touch. Of course, FaceTime has been great when you could phone each other and see each other at the same time, as long as Bill had the camera angled at his face and not anywhere else but him. He always liked me to cook mince and tatties when I was over, good staple diet of the Scottish people. It must have brought back memories of his own childhood. In 2013, I was over again, and on this occasion, I met my sister Jennifer. It was like looking at myself in the mirror. Jen kept me well informed over the past few weeks of Bill's progress, but sadly, his time had come. Unfortunately, the last time I saw Bill was in 2016, when I arrived in Miami and drove up to West Palm Beach, and to be told that my partner George of 20 years had died unexpectedly offshore, and I had to return immediately to the UK. We only managed to spend a few hours together. I'm grateful and blessed to have met him and will take these memories with me throughout my life.
Thank you, Catherine. I know you're watching just now. I would now like to open up the floor for those of you who would like to share some memories of Bill. We're going to use maybe 10 or 15 so minutes of our time. So please keep your share to 2 or 3 minutes, and I open the floor to you guys who would like to share some memories of our friend Bill. And please just come up and speak loudly and clearly into the microphone.
Well, good morning. My name is Thorne, and I'm a friend of Bill. This morning, I was at a Zoom meeting with a number of his other friends who couldn't be here this morning. They are for age or, medical issues or distance. But what it really amounted to was about 45 minutes or so of true friends of his expressing their love and stories of Bill. His grumpiness, his curmudgeonry, I've always loved the way he had his own version of the Serenity Prayer. But what was overwhelming, actually, was the fact that every single one of them talked about how he'd helped them or someone else, or that how much of his life was devoted to service and caring for others. And I honestly don't believe that the grumpy old Bill was but an act. He was really a sweet bear. Thank you.
Thank you, Thorne.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Jamie Leach. I'm a friend of Bill, and I was a friend of Bill's. And he was a curmudgeon-y kind of guy. I probably was acquainted with him, at least a dozen years. He was one of three guys that my sponsor was one, him and another guy who's already departed as well, and they were kind of the three musketeers when I was early in the program, as we say, and I looked up to them, still do. Bill was obviously different because he was Scots and he had a brogue, and we shared the fact that we'd both been in the Navy, so we were sailors, and we enjoyed that in common. He was a little bit of a military history buff, and he would occasionally send me emails and things. He knew my father was a tanker in the Second World War, and so anytime he'd find some article on a tank or something, I'd find it in my inbox. So it was nice to be able to carry on conversations like that with him. I did enjoy his company. I wore my Macbeth clan plaid tie today in honor of Bill. The Leaches are part of the Macbeth clan, at least so the tie vendor in Edinburgh would tell you. We were joking earlier that they've got a tartan for pretty much every name that walks into the shop, so they'll fix you up. Anyways, I just wanted to tell this one last little anecdote about Bill from last year. Many of you may be aware that he became a U.S. citizen for last year, and he told this story at lunch right after it. Matter of fact, it might have been the same day, but he said that the judge looked down at him, and there's an expedited
process for seniors. And the judge looked at him and said, well, Mr. Condie, why at this late date have you decided to become a U.S. citizen? And he said, well, I want to be able to vote for Trump and piss off all my Democrat friends. And he got a big laugh at the table, and that was him. You know, just gotta have a little something. Anyways, he will be missed, and he's with us here in spirit today. And thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susie, Bill's friend, and he gave me this tartan. I don't know what it is, so I'll just call it the Susie Clan. And everybody's using the word curmudgeon, and he could be. But whenever he was that way with me, I just would tell him to get lost. But the one thing about Bill was he would always apologize. And he'd say, how do you put up with me? And I said, well, it's a challenge, but it was worth it. Challenge, definitely worth it. Now, I remember on one of our many trips up and down Dixie, I was asking him about his college education. And he said, well, I didn't go to college, but I was in the Royal Navy. And I said, well, that must have been interesting. And he said, well, it was because I took Russian. I said, Russian? Why Russian? And he said, well, I was in this special services program for linguistics. And I don't know how many of you know this about Bill, but he was a spy. And he gave me this book called The Coder Special Archive with a wonderful inscription in it. But aside from that, this is what he wrote. The authors, along with 70 plus former 1950s National Service Royal Navy conscripts, including Bill Condie, reveal how they learned Russian, spied on the Soviet military, and shed light on the East-West conflict. Well, I think that's just great. And I just wanted to share it with you. And I was so proud of him when he became a citizen. And I love the one more vote for Trump. Thank you.
So my name's Hampton, and I'm a friend of Bill's, and the multiple Bills. And before I talk about a couple of my memories, I did want to share some thoughts from one of Bill's dear friends, Phil O., who, along with his wife Linda, I believe is watching via the video here, but Phil knew Bill for the last almost 25 years, and they grew to be extremely close friends. It started with the men's fifth tradition meeting, and it went through many an alcathon, many a lunch, many a Palm Beach pundits, many a Four Arts lecture, and the debates that would ensue. And Phil and Bill loved each other, and they had an awesome relationship, as did so many that are not able to come in person. But I know Phil and Linda wanted to send their great love for Bill and memories of Bill to all of his loved ones, both here and overseas and whatnot. And so it's my privilege to share that. With respect to my own thoughts on the Great Scott, which is what I would nickname Bill, I knew Bill from the first time that I came here. In 1999, in the summer, I moved here, and Bill and I were members of a fellowship that I got into when I was in Tampa, and Bill was candidly one of my first friends here in Palm Beach County through that fellowship. My family is pretty proud of their Scottish legacy, and I've been to the Highland Games and all that. So when I heard Bill's brogue, I immediately went up and introduced myself, asked him what clan, all that jazz, told him we loved Scotland, that I'd been to Oxford, etc. And I think that bought me credibility with him, so that he would overlook some of my stupid or foolish things, because as we all know, Bill did not suffer fools well, and he let them know it. But very candidly, I don't have an aspect of Bill as though he were a curmudgeon. Instead, my aspect of Bill, candidly, is that he was very cool. He's one of those people that you never needed to wonder where you stood with him, and he let you know if he thought you were wrong, and he would actually listen and engage in intellectual dialogue with you. And over the years, Bill and I engaged in a lot of intellectual debates, not the least of it, which was about a higher power. And I can tell you unequivocally that ultimately Bill did, in fact, have a strong belief in that higher power, which is kind of cool. And I remember him within the last year looking at me and smiling and saying, you know, old boy, you know I believe in a higher power, right? Of course I do. And I thought it was kind of funny because he always loved to joust me on that topic. But I also think when I think of Bill, a couple of things come to mind. One is the thought that you never grow old. I look at Bill, he was 86 years old, and in my opinion, he was a lot younger than my contemporaries, many of whom I engage in. I thought I'd tell a funny story. Bill and I were curfew busters and breakers during the hurricanes together. And it was all kinds of fun because I don't know those of you that remember, but he lived in a condominium a little north of the tennis courts by Curry Park. And he lived on the damn 10th floor, and I apologize, church, for saying the D word, and my wife's going to get on me for that, but particularly in church. But in any event, so Bill, I would go pick up Bill. We'd go find some place that was open. Then we'd eat. Or we'd get it to go, then we'd go to my kitchen. My family had left, and we'd heat it up with gas, and then we had a generator, and we'd toast it in the oven. And it's a wonderful, wonderful memory. And we both laughed because we would always break curfew and be a little bit concerned that the police would stop us, which was cool that we wouldn't be drinking, but at the same token, I'm an attorney. And so the excuse was like Bill was like my older relative, and I was getting him back if we got stopped. And I was, at that time, driving a pickup truck, so there was a likelihood I would get stopped, but fortunately we never did. But, you know, he had that sense of adventure, and he loved it, and I loved it with him, and he kept it through the end. And I'll tell you about being young. At the time of the hurricanes, the elevator didn't work in his building. And so we'd go up 10 flights of steps, which was shocking to me. And I'm sucking wind, and Bill's able to do it. It was very impressive indeed. And it was a lot of fun. And I was privileged to be part of a Thursday group, lunch group with Bill over the last almost 10 years for me. And it was awesome. Some of my fondest memories are spending that time learning from all of these men who had tremendous wisdom to share. And Bill was one of those. And Bill helped me through real challenges in life, whether it be lawsuits with my former law partners or figuring out where to send my kids for schooling. Bill would always share his opinion, and he would encourage. And I really appreciate that, and I'm going to miss him dearly. And I will tell you, through the end, he kept his optimism. And, you know, when he was going in for the aortic aneurysm surgery, the initial surgery, Bill was not able to make lunch with our group, and we reached out to him, and I was like, he's like, I'm in the emergency room, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, and I was just, usually he was a bit of a stoic, but he's like, I was like, would you like me to come just check? And he's like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And so I came, and, there was no iota of fear in Bill. And it was just matter of fact for him. And he got through that first surgery, and it was just really cool. It was impressive. So, candidly, I call him the Great Scott because I truly believe he was and is the Great Scott, and he will always be in my heart, and he will continue to live on, and I will miss him very dearly. And I will share two more things. One of his favorite books that he used to like to hawk to us as a great book to read is How the Scots Invented the Modern World. So I recommend that to all of you. And then finally, shortly before he had to undergo the second surgery, and the last time I saw him, which was the day before, I said, Bill, what would you like for me to share with our friends in the fellowship? Of course, I had no idea, he had no idea that he was going to have emergency surgery the next day and never candidly come out of it. And Bill said, he smiled, and he said, don't drink and go to meetings. And so I will leave that with you. God bless you all, and God bless to Bill's family, and thank you all.
There be anyone else that would like to share? One more? All right, Ken.
Hey, I'm Ken Cook, and I'm solid Irish. And my kids, all three of them, are half Scot and half Irish, so you can figure that out. He was absolutely a wonderful guy, terrific guy. I know him since he first came here. Just magic. I don't know if you realize he was a writer. He was extremely bright and fun to be around. About, I guess a little more than a year ago, maybe a little less, he got a new car, and he said, what do you think, Kenny? And I said, you got a leak right here on the rain gutter. You better fix that or else it's going to get wet inside. Oh yeah. So I said, if you're going to get the stuff, don't get silicone because it's hydroscopic. You want to get urethane rubber. And he looked at me like kind of surprised. And I said, and you need masking tape. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'll get the urethane. Don't worry about that. So I got the urethane. I said, just get the masking tape. So he got the masking tape. I got the urethane rubber. It's still in my truck. The tape is still in his car. The hole is still there. If you want, you can. Some people are going to know this. I have my grandchildren are in Dundee right now, and again, I have three kids half. So you can try and, if you know this, say it with me. Just a wee duck and Doris. It means a little drink. Just a wee bit. That's all. It's a little bit. A wee duck and Doris before we gang the war, meaning before we go to war. There's a wee wifey waiting. There's a wee button bin. That's a little kid, little baby. If you can say it's a broad brick moon lick nicked to nicked, you're all right, you can. Anybody know that song? It's a wee duck and Doris. It's a wee bit that's all. It's a wee duck and Doris before we gang a war. There's a wee wifey waiting with a wee button bin. If you can say it's a broad Vic moonlight, you're all right, you can. God bless you, Bill.
Thank you, Ken. A spy. Wow, that's kind of incredible. This might blow up all the remarks because they're based on what I knew was his career, so maybe this isn't what he did, maybe it is what he did. So, Bill, as many of you knew, or he told us, he was a lifelong newspaperman, and he always had an opinion. Luckily, he found an opinion and a profession where he was paid to put that into writing, and the opportunity for the audience to respond was limited. The perfect job for a sardonic, witty Scotsman. Now, even in death, he wanted to eulogize himself. He took time to write his own obituary, in death as in life. His daughter Jen found this while she was going through some of his documents. So it reads as follows: Bill's obituary for Bill, by Bill. William Condie, known as Bill, Billy, or Jock, died of, and then there's parentheses, insert cause, on parentheses, insert date, at the age of, insert age. Bill was born in the town of Airdrie in Lanarkshire, in Scotland's lowlands industrial belt, on February the 28th, 1934. A year later, he and his family moved to Glasgow, where he was to start school in 1939. But World War II broke out, and he was one of thousands of young children to be evacuated nationwide to be safe from the threat of bombing raids in the big cities. He and his older sister Barbara went to live with their grandparents in Armondale, a small town near Edinburgh, surrounded by farmland. They returned to Glasgow in 1942 when the bombing threat was confined to the southeast of England. He attended primary, elementary school, and secondary school, majoring in French, German, and mathematics. A school trip to Brittany in the northwest of France launched a love of languages. After school, he was being trained as an actuary when he was caught up in the military draft, where he would spend 2 years in the British services. It was jam-packed at a time with the Royal Navy Corps d'Elite, where he spent time learning Russian at an Army Joint Service School for Linguistics. He spent time, now we know interestingly why, learning military Russian, and he spent mandatory time at sea in Northern Ireland. Then 1 year in Northern Germany, monitoring Soviet radio communications, and he spent his leave in Munich and the Bavarian Alps. The rest of his life was spent newspapering. He started as a reporter in Glasgow in 1955. He learned the art of reporting, copy editing, headline writing, newspaper design, and layout. He then went to Argentina in 1961 for 3 years, where he would become the editor of the English language Buenos Aires Herald. He worked in London for a year before coming to the US in 1965 as an editor at the National Enquirer until 1968. He next held editing positions at both the New York Daily News and the New York Post until 1991, where he rejoined the National Enquirer in Florida until semi-retiring in 1995. He was married twice. Both wives predeceased him. He is survived by William and Catherine, children of his first marriage to Betty, both in Scotland, and 6 children of his second marriage to Moira. Fiona in England, Colin, Jennifer, Anne-Marie, Neil, Claire, all in the US. Bill joked that his grandchildren and great-grandchildren were too many to count. In addition, he had many close friends, in which he called his extended family. That was Bill's obituary for Bill, by Bill. I, as a pastor, have presided over funerals before, but today feels different. I am here not only as a pastor, but as a friend, grateful to say some words to honor Bill and to shine a light on what he meant to so many of us here today and to so many people tuning in. I acknowledge that so many of you here in this room knew Bill far longer than I. So humbly, I want to share some thoughts on Bill, everyone's favorite curmudgeon. I got to know Bill in his sunset years here in West Palm. I did some math, and it turns out I knew Bill for 3.5% of his life. We first met not too far from here in the basement of this church. Like so many of you here, knowing Bill through a program that he loved and a program that he gave over a quarter of his life to. A program which gave him purpose, which brought healing and gave him the gift of living and living life to the full. Some of his best years were here in South Florida. 3.5% isn't a lot, but it was definitely enough to leave a mark. Like any funeral, when someone is eulogized, it's impossible to sum up the entirety of a life. We can note all their geographical moves, list their careers and their promotions, and list the names of their children, their grandchildren, and even their great-grandchildren. But that simply doesn't do justice to summing up the entirety of what someone meant, or to map out the web of people they touched along the way. Bill had his struggles and his difficulties, and it wasn't until his early 60s that he found relief and freedom from them. Those of us who fell in love with Bill in church basements, in Testas, and breakfast at 2J's got to know a new man, a man who had, in sobriety, found a new zest for living. He got to know a man who carried the sunlight of the Spirit, and a man who was quick to give back, and a man who was quick to help. Bill connected with several of his children later in life, and it was a deep regret that he did not get to spend more time with his family. As has been noted, Bill possessed a sharp wit which could bite at times, and he carried his opinions with weight and authority. He would walk out of meetings if he thought there was too much fluff or rubbish. As has been noted, the story about his citizenship, I was going to share that story, but you've already held it. Bill did not suffer fools gladly, and cell phone companies, Apple Inc., and most recently a car dealership felt the sharpness of his tongue. The car that Ken mentioned. So I met him a few weeks ago. He pulled up to a lunch meeting in a new car, and I was like, that's a nice new car, Bill. Then a few weeks later, he shows up in this purple beat-up car. It was rusting on the front, and it had gaudy velour purple seats. So I said to him, Bill, what happened to your car? And he just said, those bastards tried to rip me off. I got a great deal on this. Parsimonious to the very end, like any great Scot. Bill was hardy. He gave up smoking in his 60s, and to treat himself, he learned to scuba dive in Puerto Rico. He would later have most of one of his lungs removed due to damage caused by smoking. He had a scar like he had been on the battlefield with William Wallace himself, but it didn't slow him down. In the past few years, he developed a relationship with Susie, and he cared very much for her, spending time in New Jersey and enjoying the social life here in the Palm Beaches. He was charming, and he proved that with an accent and a sense of humor, you can go a long, long way. He thrived in social settings, and he loved people. His most recent relationship put a spring in his step and brought a £1 million smile to his face. Bill, in so many ways, lived the American dream. He came from humble backgrounds in rural Scotland. His father was originally a preacher, so it must have skipped a generation. And he was originally a Gaelic speaker. Bill came to the US in the late 60s when the streets were filled of free love and civil rights. He would start out as a reporter on the beat and would end up at the top of his field as an editor, or so we're told. I was able to visit with Bill several times in the hospital. The first few times, it was worrying, but we thought that he would pull through and he'll be back to having us in his life soon. But obviously, that wasn't meant to be, as it became clear that his battle was increasingly uphill. On my first visit with Bill when he was in the hospital, he shared, I'm going to lose some of the decorations here. On my first visit to the hospital, he shared one of the first headlines that he had published in Scotland. So this was published in a little newspaper in a town called Dumfries in Galloway, so in the southwest of Scotland. This was the title that Bill first got published. It was in the summer. It says, "Temperatures soar into the 70s. No relief in sight." For our transatlantic friends, that's about 18 degrees, which is Parker weather here in South Florida. After his second operation, we knew that it would be an uphill battle. He was heavily sedated on oxygen, and the decision had been made that it would most likely lead to hospice. I went in to visit him a few days before he would take his final journey to hospice. I knew that this would be saying goodbye. I had prepared something to read, old Scottish poetry. I sang the Scots Wha Hae song that the piper played, and I held his hand. I told him I loved him. I told him that I was grateful for him, and I told him that he didn't have to fight anymore. I wanted to end my time with Bill by listening to some bagpipe music. So I pulled out my phone and put it on the pillow next to his head and hit play. And as soon as I hit play, he squeezed my hand and held it up and squeezed it tightly for a few seconds and then went back to his sedated state. That is a special moment that will live long in my memory. Today, in this church, we sit in the paradox of love and loss. The contrast we feel acutely today is the human condition. We love, but we also lose. We can't shelter ourselves to love because of the potential fear and the potential pain of loss, but we honor it as a human privilege. We choose to love, and we choose to feel. We choose to embrace the fullness of life, and that means embracing relationships and opening ourselves up to be loved and loving others. So often in death, that is the most common regret, that we did not love enough, that we did not spend more time. Today, we hug our loved ones a little tighter. We say, I love you, because we know the pain of loss. But we choose to love because it makes life fuller. We honor Bill by carrying his legacy with us. We weep, we laugh, and we remember. We help each other get through the days ahead, where we will feel his loss most sharply. At these times, we contemplate our own mortality and the question, what have we valued and what have we prioritized? Prioritize love and prioritize those who matter to you the most. I love Bill. He was a good man and he embraced life. He was curious about people and had a voracious appetite for knowledge. His mind never dulled, and it was razor sharp until the end. His decline was quick, and even though he was 86, it felt far, far too soon. He had a lot of living left to do. We will miss him dearly. Rest easy, lad. I want to end our time together with going out of this place with the memory and love of Bill in our hearts, but with a Scottish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warmth upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen. Thank you for coming. This ends our time here honoring the life of the great Scot, Bill Condie. Thank you to the Pan Beach Pipes and Drums who will be playing outside. I ask that you would file out of the church from the... Oh, they're going to come back in, pardon me. We're good. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. I ask that you would file out from the back first, just to observe CDC guidelines. Thank you all for coming.